Chris Christie, I don't know when he talks about DOMA being struck down if he's really a true believer or if it's purely a cynical political move looking forward to 2016. So we're going to read his comments on DOMA. He says, it's just another example of judicial supremacy rather than having the government run by the people we actually vote for. I thought it was a bad decision. So he's opposed to DOMA being struck down earlier this week. He says, I thought that Justice Anthony Kennedy's opinion in many respects was incredibly insulting to those people, 340 some members of Congress who voted for the Defense of Marriage Act and Bill Clinton. They basically said the only reason to pass that bill was to demean people. So whereas someone like Hulskamp, an incredibly conservative representative, I think he is giving his very genuine belief on this matter. When it comes to Chris Christie, I was surprised when I read this today. I feel like this isn't just targeted at 2016. I think that that's pretty clear, although maybe you'll correct me. But I think that this is an unwise political move.
I don't disagree with you at all. But I believe Chris Christie here. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and believe him, and people in New Jersey should believe him. If he's upset by this, if he's upset by this court, and even if he is trying to appeal to voters in 2016, if he wants to be that maverick candidate for president, this is not the way to be the maverick candidate, because he's going to have to win the votes of people who are unlikely in other cases to vote for him. This would be the perfect time to point to Chris Christie and say, the tide of America, the progressives versus regressives that Dennis was just talking about, the tide of America is changing. I'm gonna get on the crest of that wave. A difficult image to actually put in your mind.
Body surfing.
Yeah, right. But
big waves.
But in fact, this is what Chris Christie is. He's on the record saying this. Barbara Buono is a state senator from New Jersey. She's running against Chris Christie for the governorship. She is about as big a long shot as there was in political history. New Jersey is a blue state. When they hear their governors say these things, it reminds them of all the things people don't like. This isn't going to help them in 2016. The people who don't want Chris Christie to be president, this is not going to appease them. There's so much more about his social agenda.
But let's recap. We're talking about a legal contract. If the churches in New Jersey or Massachusetts or Kansas want to have defined marriage, no one's challenging that. We're talking about a legal contract between consenting adults. Yeah. And the train is moving by, like you said, these people. And we shouldn't have any patience or tolerance for these views that say marriage between a man and a woman or two women is going to hurt children in some way. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I think that these quotes also are a great example of the weird mental and rhetorical contortions that Chris Christie has to attempt to make to try to figure out how he's going to pass the primary. Because if you look at his quotes, he's not saying, he's saying he's against it because he wants to appeal to those homophobic voters in the future, but he's not talking about these people don't deserve rights or I'm morally opposed to it or it's disgusting or anything like that. He's talking about judicial supremacy. He's talking about insulting the legislators from 1996. I don't think that's the sort of rhetoric that's really going to fire up primary voters. So I think that he's hurting his moderate image by refusing to recognize the change that's taking place in the country on this major civil rights issue, but he's also not doing enough if he's going to make that move to actually appeal to conservatives.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The bottom line here is if you want to be president in this country at this time, this is not what you say. Yeah. And it's not your ticket out of the primary. It's just not your ticket to the White House. This is the wrong time to be saying that. I'm surprised, actually, that Christie didn't, just sort of wasn't more deferential to the court.
I agree with him on one point, though, about judicial supremacy. The three branches of government are supposed to work in balance.
Yeah.
And the executive branch certainly has grabbed much more power going back to the Bush years and through the Obama administration. Yeah. But the Supreme Court has been grabbing power for much longer than that as well, leaving the Congress as the weakest of the three.
Right. If you look at their rulings, even this week, in the past few weeks, they 13 out of 16 of the rulings that were to benefit corporations benefited corporations, and so yes, there is a supremacy there, but it's called the Supreme Court. Yeah. And the other side of that coin, and going back to Bill Clinton again, is Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer were two appointees of his, and if you want, you can blame Bill Clinton all you want, but those two justices made a huge difference this week, both of them in both cases. And one final thing on what we were just talking about is the whole idea of supremacy. Anthony Scalia, was deferential to Congress and the Voting Rights Act. A day later, he said, well, the legislature, I'm not going to respect anything that the democratic process has adopted, while the day before he was willing to overturn it and gut it. So there's a great deal of hypocrisy coming from that bench.
Well, yeah, right in the wake of the of the decisions regarding gay marriage, he was talking about judicial supremacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he didn't. He doesn't have a 24-hour memory, I guess.
No, he doesn't. He's a Neanderthal.
But one other point I want to make, and so what you were saying there about that sort of agreeing with him that you're not supposed to have this sort of activism, that there should be some respect for the legislation that's been passed. I totally agree with that in theory or in tradition of how our government is supposed to function. But the problem is, right now, for instance, let's say we were to wait and just have it go back to the Senate and the Congress. So in 1996, they said it should be illegal. Maybe in the future, as the country changes, we elect legislators who reflect our current morals, and so we can get it changed that way. But the problem is that I don't think that that has enough room to account for the influence of money in politics. I think that when you look at the fact that the Republicans have the majority in the House right now, but received fewer total votes because of gerrymandering and things like that, I think that it's difficult to rely on traditional balance of power between the branches of government because it doesn't really reflect how that balance of power has been skewed and contorted by individual states and things like that.
I don't think we should rely on the balance of power of government as it was construed when we wrote the Constitution. The Constitution, when it was written, protected rich white landowners, 5% of the population at the time the Constitution was written. So the Supreme Court, men and women in robes given lifetime appointments, not voted in by the people, I think goes against the democratic principles on which this country should be run now. And that we see erupting all over the world, people fighting for this democracy.
Right, but it was, in fairness, the men in robes, who, and at that time only men, who changed what the imperfections were from the very beginning. And so, listen, imperfection is a big word to me because I think that's what I rely on all the time. It's not going to be perfect, and it's going to be ugly some of the time, and it takes far too long. But in the whole scheme of human history, it's worked fairly well, I would say.